Diablo II Resurrected's release is days away, and all D2R players will be starting from scratch. Some people are worried that they won't be able to farm endgame areas until they find the right gear. But we tested tons of builds from all character classes and came up with 4 solid builds that can farm the crowd favorite monster Pindleskin completely naked. This means we wear no other items than what we were blessed with upon creating our characters. The purpose is to show off the power of these builds if you build them correctly. I'm also aware that some of you think my budget choices in other videos are simply unattainable. So for the first time in any Diablo YouTube video, I'm going to show you how to find all of the items that we're going to be using today. I've included a short tutorial in this introduction that shows you how. Let's dive in. In version 1.1 of Diablo II, the developers introduced what are called synergies to the skills of all classes. They didn't always exist, but they shifted the focus of character builds from being mostly reliant on gear and items to relying more on how you've built your character. This change also made it so that certain items with plus to skills became super important for some classes. But hey, you can't just totally forget about items. Or can you? With this change came stronger core characters, and players who didn't have the best items could still be effective in certain endgame areas. One area that became a crowd favorite was Neelathok's Temple, more specifically, the unique mini-boss named Pindleskin. This walking bag of bones can easily be accessed through Anya's portal in Act 5, and can drop almost any item in the game, with the exception of Tyrael's Might and Arachnid's Mesh. But with the items that we're going to be using today, just about anything will be an upgrade. Pindleskin has the most friends out of any mini-boss in the game, and these guys always show up to his house parties. If you take too long killing this mini-boss, his drunk friends that passed out on the lawn are gonna wake up, stumble in the house, and charge at you for trying to put the knucks to their friend. So not only do we want to be able to kill Pindle and his minions quickly, but we're going to need to establish some form of crowd control, especially with undergeared characters. We tested so many different skill combinations from all of the classes, so if you don't see one on here that you're like, Coooley, this character would be really good, cuz you should go try it out yourself with no gear and then come back and let me know how it goes. I'll be right here. Additionally, we tried to diversify the classes for this video. So there may be other character builds within these classes that can also farm Pindle naked, but these were definitely the best in class from our testing. And yes, we did try a summon Necro, and it's not nearly as good as you would think. The funny thing is, though, I actually learned something that through 20 years of play, I had no idea was the case. If you use Revive on the drunken lawn monsters out in Pindle's yard, they almost immediately die. What? Why did they all just die? What just happened? This happens because they still have the reanimate timer on them, which reverses their animation status when it goes off. So the opposite of a living corpse is a dead one. 20 years. Never knew that happened. All of these characters that you'll see today started out at level 75 with all quests in the game done, with the exception of the quest that gives us access to the Pindle portal. That being said, let's check out this cast of characters. Let's start with the Amazon. Not surprisingly, she absolutely dominates Pindle and his minions with her javelin skills. When you focus on javelin and spear skills tab with an Amazon, the synergies tend to get insane. At high levels, a Javazon can do some of the most ridiculous damage you've ever seen in this game. But at lower levels or with less geared characters, we can focus on the skill Lightning Fury and make light work of crowds of monsters with this skill. Here's a quick look at the gear. All of our characters will have the exact same stats. We hold shift, we click on Vitality. This is to increase our life total as much as we possibly can and to hopefully increase our survivability should any monsters get close. For the skills, we visit the passive and magic tree first. We put 1 point into pierce so that our javelins have a chance to pierce through our enemies. While dodge, avoid, and evade are good skills, I will remind you we are level 75 and fucking naked. We must prioritize damage with these builds, as a good offense is going to be our best defense. After we've got our 1 point into Pierce, we first max Lightning Fury, and then we max Charge Strike. From there, put the rest of your points into literally any of the remaining synergies that are a synergy for both of these skills. The strategy is to keep your distance at the door and throw those beautiful Lightning Furies at Pindle and his friends. When the crowd dies down or there's only a couple left, you can actually finish them off with Charge Strike at close range. Then simply collect your loot and get the hell out of there before the drunk monkeys show up. The form of crowd control with this build is just simply the area of effect associated with Lightning Fury. It not only can stop monsters by knocking them back, but it also just does massive damage to crowds of monsters. Two situations will force you into a hasty save and exit, and those are when the minions are extra fast, or if they're lightning immune. Neither of these will be a problem, however, once you acquire better gear. Additionally, this build is capable of farming Eldritch, who is found just off from the Frigid Highlands waypoint. You can take a stab at Shank as well, but if there's any archers around, just forget about it with a naked build. Once you get slightly better gear, or really just any gear at this point, these will be some pretty good target areas for you to farm with this character, as you'll be able to find some really good end game items, and the runs don't take very long at all. Next up on this list is the Wind Druid. While we did test a Fisher build, come to find out, Pindle's fire resist is just really high. Instead, we focused on the physical damage from Tornado to do our bidding. Tornado Druids are actually pretty simple with their skill trees. You just dial straight down the center in the Elemental tab. You put 1 point into Arctic Blast to get to all of the skills that you need, and then literally every single skill after that, put 20 points into it. This will maximize your damage that you can do with Tornado, and it also provides access to Hurricane, which can freeze or slow down monsters that wander a little too close. And for reasons that we'll get to in just a moment, you're also going to want to have 1 point into Summon Grizzly. That will require you to put 1 point into all of the skills seen here on the Summoning tab, and will also conveniently require you to put 1 point into Oak Sage, which is also a very good skill to have active during any time really with a druid, but particularly when you're significantly undergeared. The only problem with the NATO Druid is his lack of direct crowd control. Remember that one stray point that we put into Summon Grizzly? Turns out it works as pretty good crowd control, or at least a very big distraction. If you get into the habit of casting Summon Bear directly down on top of Pindle and his minions before they see you, it'll actually distract them just long enough for you to get close and fire some nados. Not only does Tornado do a pretty significant amount of damage to a single target, but it keeps cutting through the monsters. So anything in its path of destruction will take pretty significant damage for every tornado that you can fire off at close range. However, you will still want to keep your bear alive and active when you're at close range. The last thing that you want is all of these skinwalkers deciding suddenly that you are the most logical target to attack in this situation. You kind of always want to have their attention diverted between you, your bear, and even your Oak Sage. So the way that we control the crowd in this sense to give ourselves some opportunity is very indirect, but it can be very effective if you get in the habit of doing it. Next up is my favorite, the Trap Sin. Death Sentry is absolute gold in this game. This skill not only does lightning damage directly, but it also casts Corpse Explosion when it can. This causes harm to surrounding monsters in the form of significant physical and fire damage. Speaking of fire damage, Fire Blast is not only a synergy to Death Sentry, but it also allows us to diversify our damage even further. After you've laid down a set of Death Sentries and you start throwing Fire Blast into a crowd of monsters in front of you, this naked build can really clean things up quick. For the skills on this build, we're going to head right over to the trap tree, put 20 points into our main skill, Death Sentry, 20 points into its damage synergy, Lightning Sentry, and then 20 points into Fire Blast. I went a little overkill here. You probably only need about 5 skill points into Burst of Speed on your Shadow Disciplines tab, and then the rest of your points, you're going to want to dump into Mind Blast. Mind Blast is actually a very important skill in these runs, and as you'll see in some of them, it's our main source of crowd control. Not only does Mind Blast knock back and stun the enemies that you're going after, but it also has a chance to convert them, meaning that they will literally start fighting the other monsters around them and vice versa. So basically with Mind Blast, you cause a shit ton of confusion among Pindle's minions and can quickly take advantage of the situation. The strategy with her build is to immediately Mind Blast Pindle and his minions and try to convert some of them. Make sure to keep them converted through the fight though, for the same reasons that you don't want all of these minions turning on you like we talked about with the Druid. The same thing can happen with the Assassin if you don't keep Mind Blast up. From there, surround the group with Death Sentry traps and light them up with Fire Blast from afar. Even with a significantly undergeared Sin, Pindle's got no answers to what this Assassin can do to him. And what would this list be without a Blizzard Sorceress? Now again, there are other versions of the Sorceress that are actually pretty effective naked against Pindle as well, but none as efficiently as the Blizzard Sorceress. So for these purposes, with this specific challenge, Blizzsork is best in class. For the skills, we obviously want to put one into Teleport to get to Pindle very quickly. If you have gear or you're not playing in these extreme circumstances like I am, feel free to put 1 point into Warmth. And then from there, you're going to want to max Blizzard, max Cold Mastery if you're undergeared, Ice Blast, Glacial Spike, and put our remaining points into Ice Bolt. All of these are synergies for Blizzard and will increase its damage. The big form of crowd control from this build comes from the skill Glacial Spike. This will freeze the entire group of minions when you shoot it at them. While Ice Blast is great at freezing one monster, Glacial Spike can freeze an entire group. And with Cold Mastery maxed, we actually do a pretty significant amount of damage, even naked, to Pindle's peons. After firing 1 or 2 Glacial Spikes here, the minions won't even be a threat to you. From there, you'll have free reign to take on Pindle one-on-one, and just as collateral damage, take out his group of minions. But again, much like other builds, you're probably going to want to clean these guys up before the lawn drunkards come into play. Those guys are naturally cold immune, and you do not want to f with them. Now you know how to farm one of the most rewarding and easily accessible monsters in D2R, and especially how to do it with minimal gear. So before you feel pigeonholed into using one certain MF build to do all of your farming for better items, just know that there's a lot more than what most people are talking about. As you obtain better gear, other areas of the game are also doable with just about every build you've seen here. And with no realm downs, we can go into D2R knowing that we can farm this undead king for better items as quickly and as often as we would like. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.